So a state trooper was on the side of the road on Highway 22, and he was looking. It was a good day. He was affirming that he would find some speeders. And so, lo and behold, here comes a car that's just kind of putzing along. And he thought to himself, there's as much danger in someone going really slow as there is in someone going too fast. And so he moves forward and he pulls the car over, and there's 5 elderly women in the car. And he said, "Ma'am," he said, "I just needed you to be aware that, what you're doing." He said, "You're going very slow." And she said, "Well, no, I'm not. I'm going the speed limit." And he said, "Well, why do you think that?" And she said, "Well, because I'm reading the sign, and the sign says 22. He said, "Ma'am, that's not miles per hour." He says, "That's the highway, name of the highway." And he said, "And by the way, when we've been talking, I have observed how everyone in your car, no one's really saying anything. Are they okay?" She said, "Oh, they'll be fine. We just came from Highway 99. And I think it's very important with our teaching, because all of us, we're so awake, and we get how we call in spirit. We get how we call in finding that realm and all of those pieces. And so we lean into a place that says, everything in my life is a sign. And I'm sure you've been there before yourself, right? And it's like, there's a sign here and I want to pay attention to it. But there's another component that is part of that is necessary for all of us to remember. It's likened to the story of the teacher that says to the little boy, "How many directions are there on a compass?" And he says, "There's 5. And she says, "There's 5? He said, "Yes, east, west, north, and south, and where I am." Right? And where I am, that's an important part of the direction of life. And so when you are asking for a sign, when you're asking for the highest and best, remember that a strong component of that is spiritually where you are at the time. Because if you're coming from a place of desperation and you just want something to work out, you may see several signs, but they may not be the right direction. You understand that? You might see something that looks kind of alluring, that isn't according to your list of your top 50 things that you're looking for, and it may appear to be a sign, but literally all it is to remind you you're getting one step closer to where you want to be. What's happening? You're getting one step to where you want to be. That's right. And so you want to be aware that within your own being, that your situational stress is minimized, that parts of coercion or manipulating is minimized, and that you are spending more energy coming into a presence that says, only my own can come to me, as we said last week, and only my own can stay. Right? And so you want to be in that consciousness of the right sign for you. And sometimes it's not easy, because we live in a society that wants instant gratification. Now, right? I want mine, it's coming, I want it right now. And in that awareness, we want to allow spaces for things to grow. I remember 2 of my favorite jobs in growing up. I'm still growing up, but my jobs when I was 11 and when I was 15. One was I changed tires at my grandfather's store from the ages 11 to 13. And I loved that job because it was instant gratification. It was like there was a need and it was filled and it was done. I put together lamps. I worked for an auctioneer and I put together lamps for the Saturday night show. And I felt like I'm accomplishing something. But more often in life, the things that we are working on now, each and every one of us, is we are planting seeds for things that we don't necessarily see how they're happening now. And every now and then when you sing, let there be peace on earth, not let there be, there is peace on earth, and there's peace now. When you're in that, don't get into the illusion that you don't see any signs that say that it's actually happening. It is happening. And the energetic presence that you're putting into that request is operative, and consciousness is changing, but we must be patient to allow it to unfold. Think of it as like a worldly diet system. You know, I thought if I don't see something on that scale after saying no when everybody else is gobbledygook on yes, you know, something needs to occur, and it does. It does. But it's you stay the course. There's a movie that's touched my soul so much that I've watched it 3 times in the last few days. And yes, like you, I'm very creative and I have a lot to do. Bless you. But anyway, it's the movie On the Basis of Sex. Powerful film, right? About Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her story. And I look at the courage that she is the one that literally began to transform discrimination of any gender. And she referred to her speech in front of the judges. She said, here I am, and I am here representing social radical change. Because women were allowed to vote 100 years ago, but somehow they forgot and they started asking again. You see. And so there were seeds that were planted then. There were signs that the times were changing, but the made laws did not go with the changes at hand. And that's often what's happening with our lives, is that we are putting something in motion, but we are allowing those laws to permeate within our own being so that what we are truly calling in, when it manifests, it will be like Velcro. You can't get it off of you if you wanted to. Can you identify with what I'm saying? And so it's a very powerful kind of reality. I was thrilled when I was reading the news that for the first time ever, that Miss America, Miss USA, and Miss Teen USA are all African American women. Right? And often we're elated about such successes. And yet we want to remember the people that still said yes, that continued to move forward, the people that were unwavering, that came forward and said, this is what I believe, though the signs aren't telling me that this is going to work out. They continued to move forward, right? People with health challenges, people with diagnosis, you keep moving forward. Even though the signs may be saying one thing, you are saying another. In your presence, in your power, right? I was this week, I was in El Capitan in the canyon outside of Santa Barbara, and I've never seen so many gophers in my life. I mean, it was just such a treat. I don't have any gophers in my backyard, do you? And it was just wonderful to watch, you know, how the gopher really exists, and that he or she, I'm not really sure what gender, but excuse me. Anyway, they have their little hole, and they only peek out so far. You know, they only peek out so far, and they're keenly aware of where the hole is. I mean, they never lose sight of how to go back to where they came from. And it'll come out a little bit, and then it's like looks around, but it never loses sight of, I'm hurrying back, and I'm toting back into my hole. And I thought, you know, I lived that way for years. I mean, I barely step forward, I barely, come back. You know, people say, I'm so glad you decided to be a minister. I said, I don't know that I really decided. I avoided it for years. You know, I avoided, I was like, go do something else, any other thing but that. I was avoiding my own soul path, even though the signs were there. I could not see them because I could not see me, you understand? And so it's like, when we learn to keep our feet going forward, there's something about we need to let go. A valuable lesson I learned years ago is it takes as much success to fail as it does succeed. Right, De La Torre? It takes as much success to fail as it does to succeed. As a matter of fact, it takes more energy for a person to keep failing than it does to succeed, because you're working against the inertia and natural laws of life. In other words, you're co-creating in the past versus the moving forward of the future. It's very significant when you make that connection in your mind. And I'm not just talking financial, I'm talking love, I'm talking children, I'm talking a lot of different kind of energy. When one keeps repeating the same story and the narrative over and over and over again, that takes a lot of work, because it is not innate, and it is not innate, and it is not in alignment with the laws. I like what has helped me the most, and it's the 4 stages of life. And they are life-changing for me, and I refer to them, and I see how I'm doing with all of those levels. It's the to me, for me, in me, and as me phases. The to me, for me, the in me, and the as me phases. And I started out in life, why is this happening to me? Right? And something would come along, and I would think I had good intentions. I'd think I understand. I would, read my Bible. I had posters in my room. I would feel like I was destined for something. Then something would go along, and I'd go, why did this happen to me? And on the collective, a lot of people that's where they live their lives. Can you believe this happened to me? Well, I better get this flu shot so something doesn't happen to me. Well, you know how it is. I mean, when you invest in those stocks, it could happen to me. And they live in this energetic field of something happening to me. It's kind of like the guy, they found him. He had been lost for years, and they found him on a deserted island. And they go up to the guy, and they said, "Guy, we can't believe it. You're alive. You're incredible. Look at you. And you have buildings on this island, too." And he says, "Oh, yeah, over there's my house." And they said, "Well, what's that building over there?" He said, "Well, that's where I go to church." And they said, well, what's that other building?" He said, "Well, that's where I used to go to church." What is happening to me? And the correct way in our spiritual adulthood, when we catch ourselves saying, "Look what they did to me," we finish that statement by saying, "Because I allowed it." We finish the statement by what? Because I allowed it. And then you're in a place of essence and energy, and you start envisioning your life that everything is for you. It's all for you. And often it's hindsight that allows you the opportunity to see what has been there for you. Emma Curtis Hopkins would say very clearly that everything is good. Everything is God. I know there's good in this situation, and I demand to see it right now. And I think that's something that we can all do in our lives. Is we do not demand and declare enough. We bring this lower vibration frequency to the table. You stand in that place and say, "Here we are. Bring it in, and I allow God to flow in me. It is in me. The very thing I am seeking, the very thing you are seeking is in you, or you would not be seeking it in the first place, ever. It's not possible." And Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "What lies before us and what lies behind us are tiny matters compared to what lives in here. In us, in that consciousness, because we learn to live in a place of God as me, a responsibility and accountability, and the greatest gift of humility that one could ever long for, you see. I love this Native American axiom that says, God sleeps in the rocks, awakens through the plants, walks through the animals and the birds, and knows itself in humankind. Isn't that powerful? God sleeps in the rocks, awakens through the plants, walks in the animals and birds, and knows itself in humankind. It's such an energetic field, such an energetic field. And to be in that and to be aware and to feel it, to allow. I love, and I'll close with the story of the students at Penn State that were kind of cocky, somewhat arrogant. And they knew they had a chemistry test coming up on Monday, and they felt like they would do really well, so they didn't study. They just drove away and partied for the weekend. Well, they kind of over-partied, and they didn't make it back. So all 4 of them called their professor and said that they wouldn't be able to make it back because they were en route and they had a flat tire. And the professor said, no problem. Just come and I'll meet you at 9:00 a.m. on Tuesday and you can take the test. So they come, they report, he sends them all to separate rooms, and they open the test, and the first question is worth 5 points. And it was a chemistry question, and of course they knew the answer. They were very smart guys. And then they opened up the next page, and it was worth 95 points. And it said, which tire was it? Life really isn't, it's so much more than what you know. It's so much more than what you know. It's how to live the truth in the way that you know it. And that's what solidifies you as a phenomenal human being expressing itself as the divine. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.